How long did it take to write Kumiko?
I think we had our first draft probably in about 2002. We did a lot of like cultural research on Japan, and if you've seen the movie, the office lady culture there, and a lot of the traditions there, and it's a very unique society, and the way things are just very the traditions and things are very kind of formulaic, and we just kind of started researching to make sure that we had as much of a non-tourist version of Japan as possible. We wanted to make sure that we were very authentic and real to like that culture, especially because we were dealing with this element of the story that is there's a fantastical element of the story with her looking for this fictitious fortune.
What is the film actually about?
For us, it's about this woman who's kind of looking for an escape and looking for a way out of her kind of cyclical life and the things that she's either imposed on herself or the society has imposed on her, and she's looking for anything to kind of give her an excuse to get out of that, and she becomes attached to this myth that there's treasure to be had in America if you just go and seek it.
You're also dealing with concepts of obsession, of sanity, of delusion, and fantasy, as you mentioned before.
When we circled back to the story online after writing the draft, that was the interesting twist to it all, is that years later more information came out, and the story that we and a lot of people believe was true actually turned out to be a myth, an urban legend, and there are some elements to it that there was a woman who went from Minnesota or from Japan to Minnesota, and she got lost in the wilderness, but all the fantastical stuff, the looking for lost treasure and the treasure map and all these sorts of things, that was all just sort of folklore and just sort of one of the telephone game on the internet. And so we were kind of reverse engineering the script and kind of figuring out, like, we knew there would be some sort of or possibly a tragic ending to this quest, as most quests end tragically, in mythology and so forth. They usually don't have the happy ending that you think. But we wanted to leave it with a little bit of hope, and that's where we came up with the ending that we did. And we like it a little open to interpretation, and we like hearing other people kind of what their thoughts on the ending are. So and they're all valid because of the way we constructed it.
As an independent filmmaker, you and your brother, how conscious are you guys of offering an alternative to the mass market blockbuster culture that is currently being shoved down our throats?
I think, we kind of want, when we set out to the stories that interest us and the movies that we want to make, it's definitely, it's the movies we kind of want to see. And not to say that we don't enjoy the popcorn and the blockbuster films, but we definitely want to make films that leave the audience thinking and kind of we have a huge respect for the audience's intelligence, and that's when we do a lot of gut checks when we're writing and when we're filming and when we're editing, and a lot of the times it's how much information can we strip out and kind of continue the story along and kind of know that the audience is really on board, and what is the reason why they're on board and they're following the story, and when doing so we've our experience has been that the audience really respects and sees much more deeper levels in the character and the story than you could if everything was spelled out. Kumiko it's a quieter film, and it definitely has a unique pace to it. And one of the reasons it's that way is because we're exploring a character who spends a lot of time kind of processing things on her own, and she's kind of a loner, and the movie's from her POV. And if we did that in a way, where she was explaining everything with internal monologues or voiceover, it would give the audience an excuse to tune out and to kind of, not pay attention to what they were seeing and not challenge them in a way. And I think audiences want to be challenged on these types of stories, and I think that's from our perspective, that's the kind of movies that we want to see, is the ones where we're thinking about it afterwards, and we're remembering things that were in the first half of the movie that come back in the second and kind of capture us in a certain way. And so that's part of our gut instinct with the films that we're trying to make.
Rinko Kikuchi puts in such a great performance in this film. I'm very keen to know, was it hard getting her?
When we first wrote it, we had no idea what we were going to do with it, and we had no idea who was going to be Kumiko, and we knew that we were going to spend a lot of time watching her think, and going back to the last question, that's the kind of movies that we like. We like these movies where you're watching people figure things out, and I think we first met Rinko in 2008, and it was shortly after her success with Babel, but we had seen her in a couple other Japanese films, like this film called Funky Forest, which is great. So some lesser things, and the thing that we if you've seen Babel, she plays a deaf mute, and but it's just an amazing performance, and the thing that we really liked about her, and especially after working with her and working through the process and the character, is she's such a confident actress that she can convey a character without having to spell it all out, and having to overemphasize certain things, and her reactions are subtle, but they're true. And she also acts with her whole body, which I think is, there's some actors that are great, and they're great acting with their voice, and Rinko's, she can definitely, like, her words can cut like a knife as well as anyone's, but she's also a great actress in that, her character is her whole self, and we're watching Kumiko, walk through all these different landscapes and different obstacles, and you just by the way she walks and carries herself, you can get a sense of her character, and a lot of that was working with Rinko to bring that out. But that was one of the wonderful things that she brought to it, for sure.
And it's such a beautiful performance, given how still she is a lot of the time and how little she actually says. It's quite a rich performance.
Yeah, I think one of the things when we first met her, she actually didn't speak a lot of English. She understood it pretty well, but she was more comfortable talking through an interpreter. And but we bonded over similar filmmakers and similar films and things that we liked. I know that Buster Keaton came up a bunch. We were just kind of talking about how he can, there's something about his face and his expression, and you can, he's one of the great silent film stars of all time, I think, if not the greatest. And so we had some, of those similar sensibilities. And then, just on a side note, we finally ended up shooting the film in 2012, and by then she had learned English pretty well, and we always joke that either she's really quick at picking up languages or we're really slow at making movies, but it worked out. It worked out in the end for everyone, because it was. I mean, we met her a couple times over the years, but when we finally got her on set, it was like, oh, this is a really a different experience, and she was so comfortable working with us. It was a joy.
This doesn't feel like an American film that went to Japan. it feels like a Japanese film that came to America. For want of for want of a more eloquent phrase, were you deliberately going for a quote foreign film quote look?
Not necessarily. I will say we're very influenced by a lot of foreign films and foreign filmmakers. When we were breaking it down, one of the things we wanted to make sure with, because there is, like I said, that fantastical element to it, and the beginning's a little left to interpretation, and definitely the end is left to interpretation, and but we wanted her story and the bulk of everything that she's going through to be grounded in reality and have a sense of a naturalism to it. And even when you do that, things are stylized, and the way we shoot is definitely stylized, and our choices are made for a certain way. But when we were over in Japan and working with the production service company over there, we were very open about getting cultural. I mean, we did as much homework as we could, but we were very open to get cultural feedback, and like I said, we wanted to make a non-tourist version of Tokyo. And when we told them that we wanted to shoot in more realistic, or not realistic, but more less tourist locations, the people we worked with over there were ecstatic. They were like, yeah, everybody that comes over here wants to shoot the neon and the bright lights and all that sort of thing. But they were really happy to kind of show like this more grounded version of Tokyo, and I think that's part of what makes it feel less like an American film in that respect.
What are the practicalities of making a film that's based on a famous film?
For us as filmmakers, we never wanted to make a sequel or a spoof or a winky homage to Fargo. It was really, because if you read the story on paper, it could come off as quite it could rub people the wrong way for sure. And so what our role in it was making sure that everybody knew that our intentions were good, and the film that we were making was going to be as respectful to the Coen's work as possible, because it's such a great movie, and the last thing we wanted to do was ape that movie.
Now, how do you and your brother work together? You're a writer and producer. He's a director. Are you in any way a de facto director as well?
Well, I mean, the way we kind of realized it a long time ago is we've just been making home movies since we were little kids. When we were small, we started out with Super 8 cameras, and it graduated to VHS, and every weekend we were just kind of making movies together. And when you're that age, I'm talking like around 10 or 11. You don't really understand the difference between a director or an actor or a cameraman or an editor. It's just kind of all lumped into one. So we would take turns, one holding the camera and one being in front of it, and that's part of the reason why we're comfortable acting still. The nice thing about that is we've learned a lot of different disciplines, and we have a lot of different. We have a bunch of filmmaker friends that we've helped with projects, and everybody is kind of like a do-it-yourself attitude on filmmaking. And David is his background is much more on the he went to film school, and so he's much more on the directing and writing side, and I'm much more a little bit more technical. So editing and producing and stuff like that comes a little bit more naturally to me. But our strengths work well together, and everything kind of overlaps. So we do a lot of pre-production. We do a lot of homework. We make sure that everything everything that we want to do is pretty much figured out, and that enables us to work as a single unit when we're on set. And it also enables us to be very flexible when something changes, like weather or location, or if somebody has a better idea than what we had originally thought of, we can ditch everything knowing that we have a good baseline to work from, and explore some other options. And being sort of inflexible or very certain about what you want to do enables you to be actually much more flexible and open to other things later on for us. At least that's how our experience has been.